everybody. I want to take a little bit of time to talk to you more about the staffing project, the team project. There is a 4-page instructional document. This is what I've got here on the right hand of the screen, posted within the team project module on Canvas. And you'll notice there's quite a few other resources within that project. This is a pretty involved project, and I have found that sometimes there are some things that are just easier to communicate clearly through speech than trying to articulate everything in writing. So you'll notice as you're reading through the document, there's a couple things where I just say, I talk about this more in the video, or refer to the video for more information. I want you to view this video as a supplement to the written instructions. It's not an either or, so it's not okay, I'm going to read the document or watch the video. They really need to be used in conjunction. Okay, so this is kind of you need to read the staffing project instructions first. So if you haven't done that, stop and do that, because I really am using this video more to kind of just like fill in some holes and to elaborate on a few things throughout the instructions, just to make sure you're clear. I can't stress enough, this project, it builds, you need to have a pretty solid understanding for the overall scope of the project before you just dive right in, okay? Because it'll help you kind of, if you understand what you're going to be using the information for down the road, I think it helps you be a little more efficient in your collection of that information. Okay, so the instructions starts off with an overall scope. Okay, so it kind of tells you what the overall objectives are for this assignment. This is classified as an active learning project, which means we're taking the concepts from the book and you're going to be applying them to a real live organization. Okay, so you're going to reach out and find a company to actually kind of partner up with for this, and you're going to apply some of the concepts that we talk about to a real situation. If you've taken my compensation and benefit class, okay, I have a kind of a sister project, if you will, or a similar project that focuses on different aspects of the different HR functions, but you are able to use that same organization, okay, because this will kind of round it out. It will give you more knowledge or greater understanding for a different kind of slice of that pie. Okay, so this is not the same project. It asks you to do different things, and you are more than welcome to continue with that organization if it worked well last time, if you've taken my class before. Okay, so you're basically going to be working with a team, all right? And you are going to, you'll notice as we move through the chapters, when you watch the lecture videos I post, and when you work through the chapter outlines that I post for chapters 1 through 4 and 6, you'll notice some connections, right? So I may talk about the project in the chapter, in the chapter specific lectures. Okay, I actually will do a lot of that, especially when we get to chapter 4. Okay, so that's why I say this project is something that it is pretty involved. Okay, so if you're struggling with one of the specific chapters, as you move down this document, you'll see what I'm talking about, chapter specific exercises. So there's an assignment for this project for 5 chapters 1 through 4 and 6. So the expectation is that, before you and your team start on any of these exercises, that you've completed the outline, that you've watched the video lecture. And when I say video lecture, I mean audio. So you'll open up the PowerPoint presentations for each chapter, and there'll be embedded audio clips throughout, especially for chapter 4. I believe maybe another chapter as well, I will actually record kind of a screen recording or something like this, so I can get into the Excel workbook that corresponds to this project and kind of walk you through that as well. So there'll be lots of information and assistance once we start talking about the chapter specific material. Okay, but for now, what you want to do is there's a couple things you need to do immediately, or within the first few weeks of the course, to kind of set you up for success. The first is forming a team. So I talk about that in the classes orientation video. I explain how to do that through Canvas. It's definitely not a requirement. So I suggest, if you've got strong preferences, if you feel that you most of the time have bad group experiences, or feel like you definitely don't like just being randomly assigned to groups. Maybe you have someone you've worked with in the past, or would like to try to find other individuals that have similar goals, and work ethics, work strategies, then by all means use the discussion post for the first week to introduce yourself, and use that as a platform to kind of find people that may be similar. Okay, so you could, if you're someone that doesn't want to procrastinate, doesn't like procrastinating, that would be something to include in your introduction. And that would be a good way to get the ball rolling, and to, for other people who may feel the same way, then to reach out to you. Okay. If you do not join a team, or, don't really care, would rather me assign you to a team, that is fine as well. But just recognize I will be assigning you to a team with other members who did not want to seek out team members as well. Okay, so regardless of how you get in your team, once you're in your team, it is very important that you get started. Okay, and the first thing you're going to do is you're going to meet with your team members, and you're going to see if anyone in your group has any inside connections to an organization that might work for this project. And so when I first started teaching with these like active learning projects, before I introduced it to my first class, I envisioned it being much more difficult for students to find organizations. So I had put together some material, an email template for them to reach out, kind of cold calling. So I thought, all right, pick an organization you're interested in, and then here's a kind of an email template that you can use to reach out to the HR director or the CEO, and inquiring if they would be interested in letting you do some research with their company. But I was surprised that no one needed any of those resources. Like the first few times I taught this course, because when you're in a group, normally, as it's worked out, most of the time somebody within each group either works for a company that the team is interested in using for the project, or maybe their spouse or roommate or family member works for a company that they want to use. So I definitely suggest starting that way, and seeing if you've got kind of inside track to an organization. So what I think you'll find is that the more information you're able to get, so the closer of a relationship you have with an organization for this project, the more valuable your findings may become, and the process may be, because you'll be able to be a little more flexible, and you'll be able to get this information that kind of you need to kind of help you move the way that you want the project to progress. I know that sounds a little vague right now, but what you'll learn, and what we'll talk about as we move forward, no two projects are going to end up looking identical, okay? Because no two companies are the same. And so what I like to do is I like to work with students on developing, application-based projects that benefit their learning, but are realistic and provide value to the organizations they're working with as well. So, as you're communicating with your organization, everyone's going to get to a bump in the road, or they can't provide this, or this is, I was talking to them and they are really looking at expanding, and that, here's a new position, and you'll see what I'm talking about as you get going. There's not step instructions that are going to apply across the board. So you'll notice that each chapter, there's concepts that I want you to apply. There's things I want you to do, but how you actually do those is a lot going to be based on the level and amount of information you're able to get from a company. And there's going to be some variation just depending on what type of company it is and what their goals and involvement are of this project. So stay in touch with me. When you get to what you see as a fork in the road, or not sure, should I do this or this? That's what I'm here for. I'm very available to students, and I encourage you to keep me involved in the process. Okay. But if you don't, so if you get with your group and no one has any connections, no one works for a company that you're interested or think would be willing to allow you to research, then the next step is then decide, okay, is there a company that that as a team we're really interested in? So if you flip it, it may be harder to get some of the information right up front, but if done correctly, it could lead to your foot in the door. It can lead to maybe a future opportunity. Okay, so there's a flip side to that. So while it may be more convenient and easy to work with a company that research company that you work for, or a team member already works for, the flip side is that it may take a little more effort up front, but I've had a lot of groups that have had a lot of success cold calling, basically finding an organization that they want to work for in the future or are very interested in, and it's been great opportunities as well. So how I'll leave that is, after you meet with your group, and you need to do this fairly soon after you form your team, determine if you have an opportunity with one of the team members, okay? And if you don't have an organization that one of your team members is connected with already, then reach out to me and I can provide you with kind of an email template that you can use to kind of send out to some organizations you may be interested in. I had a group one time that a member kept emailed me several times. This isn't working. We're having the hardest time. We keep getting rejected. Blah, 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 blah. And so I met with the group and real quickly recognized what the problem was. They had taken the instructions of this project and they were basically just emailing it to the manager of an organization and saying, hey, we want to use your company for this project. See attached and let us know if that's okay. Well, of course, they are not going to get anybody to agree to that. You look at this project and it's overwhelming, especially for an organization. So the idea here is that your team is the one doing all of the legwork. So that begins initially when you reach out to your organization. So if you go through and read through this, you'll notice that there's some, you do need to get some information from the organization, but then there's some flexibility. Ideally, there's things that it would be great if you could get from your organization, but if you can't, there's workarounds. We can get them from third parties through some online resources, so on and so forth. So it really just, again, is going to come down to kind of doing a pros and cons of, if there's an organization that you're dying to work for, you really want to learn about, more about the organization, you think this project would help, then let's go for it. And I can help you kind of bridge the gaps. I mean, you need to have some buy-in. I mean, you need to have a contact there that's at least upfront willing to work with you. But then, if you're not able to get everything, or if they're less cooperative than you may have hoped, I'll work with you and we can find other ways to get at least a good bit of the required research. So this is something that each group needs to talk about and decide on. And if you end up not going with a company that you have established a connection with already, reach out to me and we'll schedule a meeting and I can give you some tips, and I want to hear about kind of which companies you're interested in and why, and then I can get you set up with some resources to help connect with those companies. As you're reading through, so basically how I want you to think about this is, you know, just starting at next week, it's week 2 of the class, when we talk about chapter 1. I mean, that's that the material we cover in chapter 1 ties specifically to a part of the project. So I strongly recommend that, at like that as individuals, that you are keeping up with the lectures, keeping up with, the outlines, completing your chapter outlines as we go week to week. And I also think that once you have identified what company, it would be good to start establishing weekly meetings, to figure out how you're going to allocate this work. Who's going to get the information from the organizations, what do they need. At the same time, it might be better, depending again on your relationship with that organization, it might be better for you to get, and I don't, instead of emailing them weekly, kind of figuring out what you're going to need from overall, and try to get it at once. So we can talk about those options again. Like, just stay in touch with me if you think that information is going to be an issue, communication is going to be an issue. Then get me involved, so we can make sure that you understand the challenges ahead with taking that route, and we can start making sure that we set some reasonable expectations to keep you on track. But definitely keep this document up as you're working through, even on an individual basis, the lectures and the chapter specific outline questions, because they both reinforce one another. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is, so after it goes through, so this is like the process, right? So you're going to work through and do the research or the exercises, the requirements, everything that's talked about through chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. As a team, you will put this information together. Okay. And then you don't submit anything. You're not going to submit anything each chapter or anything like that. You're going to then take that information, okay, and you're going to put it in a PowerPoint presentation, okay? And so I talk about a little bit under the deliverables. So deliverables, there's really 3 things that you've got to turn in for this project, okay? And they're talked about in the syllabus. So you've got a checkpoint, which is right here, final presentation, and completed Excel workbook. That's the second thing. And then peer evaluation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these next. So you'll notice that as you're moving forward through the project, when you get to chapter 4, there is an Excel worksheet that accompanies chapter 4, and you're going to work through inputting different information from that you've learned about from your company, doing things like talking about trying to basically develop the components of a job description and person specification. And so the checkpoint, what we're doing with the checkpoint is, I found that I haven't really done it. I haven't done anything like this before, but I think it's going to work pretty good. So the idea for the checkpoint is that sometimes, so the project's due in week 12. Okay. So sometime between week 8 and week 11, every group is required to schedule at least one meeting with me. Okay. This is not a getting started meeting. Okay. I'm happy to have those, but those need to happen much sooner than week 8. Okay. So if you're having trouble getting started, if you have questions about, is this company good? What do you think? How should we allocate work? Anything, preliminary, that should not be discussed in this checkpoint meeting. The idea of the checkpoint meeting is that you are substantially finished. Well, let me take it back. Depending on when you set it up, right? So you may choose to set one up at week 8. Okay. And if it's week 8 the expectation is not that you won't be as far along. Okay. If you meet with me in week 11, then the expectation is that you should be pretty close to being done. You may have some questions. You may have everything filled in your worksheet, and you want to use that time for me to look at specific things and to comment and to make sure that you did this okay, that this is what I was looking for. You can be as far along as you would like, and that's your opportunity to show me documents. If you want me to look at your slides, if you want me to look at your completed workbook, whatever you want to do, you are going to upload those into this checkpoint right here in Canvas before we meet. Okay, so if you want me to look at your spreadsheet, if you want me to look at your slides, if you want me to look at both of them, whatever it is, upload those here. Then when we meet, I'll pull up the documents and we can walk through things. You can say, hey, I'm really not sure if this is what you're talking about with these task statements. Did I group these together okay? And we will go through as much as you would like in terms of you asking questions and me reviewing things with you on the call. Okay. So in other words, do not wait for the checkpoint call. I don't want to log in and talk to a group and then them be asking me questions about how to help them reach out to an organization, or we really haven't done anything. That's the point of the check. To get those 50 points for that checkpoint, you need to be able to show that you've completed significant work. Okay, now I want to be real clear. I am not saying that I'll only meet with you one time. I'll meet with your teams as much as you want. Okay, and starting as soon as you want. So if you have questions getting started, don't wait till the checkpoint meeting. Set up another meeting. Okay, but the checkpoint is designed, is set up, is almost like you're submitting a rough draft. Okay, that you don't have to be all the way done. Okay, you don't even have to be done. With your you might want to meet with me about your Excel workbook, and ask, make sure that you've gotten your components for the presentation complete before you put your presentation together. So you do not have to have the presentation put together, but the expectation would be that you would have made significant progress, on your, through the chapter exercises. Okay. For the presentation, you'll notice that if I scroll down here, I do provide some guidelines. I think I say 25 to 35 minutes. Everyone needs to have a speaking role. So there is a link to a YouTube video, like a 5-minute video that I recorded that shows you how I want you to record your PowerPoint presentation. Basically the same way I do most of the lecture, the audio lectures. Each student's going to pick slides and they're going to embed audio files to the ones they're talking about. In this video right here, I also talk about my expectation with citing and sources. So make sure you listen to that and watch that. Basically, how your presentation should be outlined. You should introduce yourself, have a title slide, and then I want you to go through. I want you to organize it by chapter. So kind of, and I mentioned that at the at the end of each kind of section. So when I talk about what I want for each chapter, the end, I just basically say for the presentation, summarize your findings. So what I would do, I would go through my presentation. I would say chapter 1, and I have a couple slides about what your overall findings, or what you learned, what was most significant from the exercises you did in chapter 1, and do the same chapter 2, 3. When you get to chapter 4, it's definitely the most involved. So you probably have more slides about that. So I want to hear, so keep in mind, you will submit your completed you will submit your completed Excel workbook. Okay, so don't waste time telling me, like, reading the data that you've inputted, because I can read that myself. Spend your time on your presentation explaining it, talking about any challenges you had, talking about inconsistencies, issues, things that went well, so just that, filling in the gaps, if you will, telling the story. Okay, then after you go through and cover each chapter individually, Then, I talk about it here when I talk about the presentation. I want you to then have a few slides where you reflect, kind of overall what you learned from the project, and ultimately a few slides where you give your recommendations, okay, based on everything you did. So what if you do a job analysis if you're not going to be able to pull anything from that? So what are the takeaways? If you were hired by the organization as a consulting, team, what would your recommendations be? What are they doing right? What are they doing that could be, improved upon, so on and so forth. Okay. So the presentation needs to be professional. It needs to be error free. You need to have audio clips embedded on every slide, right? Like just as you would present. So if you would say anything to the class, if you were standing in front of them about slide 17, then there needs to be an audio clip embedded in slide 17. Okay, so all of the, the speaking needs to be considered. If you have specific questions, let me know. Okay, but I can tell you that if I don't give you specific guidelines, I don't come back and hold that against you either. So your guidelines are, and I'm telling you, make sure that you've labeled your slides in a way that I can clearly see that you comment, you summarize your key findings or takeaways from each of the chapters covered. And then after that, you need to talk, it needs to be clear that you are kind of doing a wrap up of kind of the overall findings, reflecting on what you learned, and then in a recommendation section, you can structure that of what's the company doing well, what can the company improve on. But keep in mind that back half of the presentation, or that last section of recommendations, if you were a consulting firm, a company doesn't hire you just to present what's going on, like let's present what they're going on, and then you want to take that a step further. What can you do with that information? What should they do with it? What are they doing well? What do they need to improve on? Okay, the next thing I want to talk about, well, the last thing I really want to talk about for now, peer evaluations. This starts now, so don't wait. I say that you won't actually log in, so you'll click here. These are due at the end of the semester. You can submit them, hopefully, and I think I'll keep the, even if I keep that date, I may move that date up because your final project is due mid-April. So I don't want students waiting until the end of the semester to do that. I want you to complete your peer evaluations when everything's kind of fresh in your mind. But come up with a way now at the beginning of the semester to track what you're doing, to not only track what you're doing, but to document any issues that you're having with other team members, or to document any issues that you might observe between two team members. So here's what happens. At the end of the semester, and I hate this. I hate when I get a student that will reach out at the end of the semester and say all of these awful things about one of their teammates. They haven't contributed. And I say, oh, that's awful. I'm so sorry. Let's schedule a meeting. There's still 2 weeks before the project's due. Oh, no, I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to approach it. I just want you to know. Okay. So here's what often happens, and it stinks. I'll go to review peer evaluations, and 9 times out of 10, that group where a student reached out, there either won't be any comments about the problem member, or there may just be comments by one student, and normally they're extremely vague. So and so just really didn't pull their part, and I would give them a C. Well, unless there's specific details that are expressed by at least 2 team members, there's really not much I can do with that. Okay, so here's what I tell you. Here's what I tell students. Get me involved, okay? If there's an issue with somebody not cooperating, let me know about it. Don't wait until, the semester's almost over. Let me know about it. There's things we can do if it's caught early enough. If you're a team of 5 and it's really just 3 of you guys that are busting your tail and 2 people aren't really pulling much of their weight. In the past, we've split the group and said, okay, well, you two can take what's been, take where you're at now, that what's been shared, but move forward on the project as two separate groups. We've done that. I've worked with groups where we've met and figured out that it's just a misunderstanding or communication problem, and things were cleared up. I can't help if I don't know what the issue is. If also, I cannot stress enough, keep a document somewhere, whether it's notes on your phone or a Word document that you can access. And if so and so doesn't show up for a meeting, write it down. Sally did not call in for this meeting. Sally was the only one that did not reply to a discussion thread we started. Be objective, because I need objectivity to really be able to make adjustments and judgment calls. So it's not enough for one person to say, so-and-so is an awful team member. I can't do anything with that. I need responses. Also, if you feel that you're being kind of ostracized, or if you're not getting the warm and fuzzies from your team members, let me know about that as well, because sometimes I can help with that. Take the evaluation seriously. Take your group, your commitment to your group seriously. Even though peer evaluations are only listed in the syllabus as being worth 5% of your grade, I do that because you're expected to be a good team member, plain and simple. Like, if I made them 30% of your grade, I also don't agree with giving people 30% of the points just for doing what's expected. Okay, so it's expected that you're a good team member. Okay, so that's why that's weighted fairly low. But what I will say is, if you have complaints from your teammates, if they say, we don't even know who this person is, or she didn't do anything, and it says this in the syllabus, if your evaluation is lower than an 85, so and that's just kind of, if basically if people have significant issues with you, then your grade will be your overall project grade will be reduced at my discretion. Okay, and we'll talk to you. I'll talk to the other teammates. But I've done it before and have no problem. If you don't do anything, for example, if you don't contribute, if you don't call into meetings, if you don't do your part, if other team members feel like they don't even know who you are, you'll get a 0. If you don't, your grade, my goal for these group projects is that they reflect, I try to make the grading system flexible enough so that it can be individualized. So if you don't do anything, you will not make a good grade. Okay, so you're the grade for content and quality, that may be an A, but then if I'm going through peer evaluations and find out that Susie never called in, she didn't do any of the work she was assigned, and if that's verified and documented, then Susie is not going to get the same grade on that project as her teammates. Okay, so just be real careful. I don't want that to be misleading. You're expected to be a contributing team member. Okay? All right. So I think, so kind of gone through and touched on some things. Again, do not procrastinate on this project, especially, start off as soon as possible, trying to determine if you have connections with an organization, because if not, then you want to give yourself enough time to find a good one. You don't want to be racing around just trying to find the first organization. You want to spend time finding a good one, so the research that you do will be valuable and interesting to members of your team. Okay, so make sure don't necessarily wait until the checkpoint to reach out. If things are going great and you're to be honest with you, like, I've had groups that have done exceptionally well on this project that have had minimal interaction with me. But then there's some groups that I've met with quite often. I think it depends on your style of learning. So I feel like between this document, these instructions, and the weekly lectures that I will post, I talk about the project a lot. So, also, I'm not trying to scare groups. So if you're team members are alert and sharp and you're watching the weekly lecture videos, I don't want you to be worried that things are going too smoothly, because that's not the case at all. You're probably right on track. I'm just saying that if you have issues, I'm more than happy to work with you, as much as you need. I'm here. I just, again, don't know that you're struggling unless you tell me. So reach out as frequently as you need. Everyone needs to schedule a meeting with me during weeks 8 through 11. And again, that is I need to see substantial progress on the project. If it's week 8, not going to be looking for, necessarily completed Excel workbook, but the expectation is that you've gotten your data collected and you've got substantial work put into it. I would say, that try to get as much done as you can before we meet, before you schedule a meeting. I think that will be most beneficial to you. But then again, just plan. If you have a question, then don't wait till that checkpoint meeting to address it. Feel free to reach out. It doesn't have to be the whole team. Well, it does. I would prefer it to be the whole team for the checkpoint meeting. If that's not possible, we can figure something out. But what I was saying about not having to be the whole team is just from now until then. Like if you meet and y'all have a question about something, don't feel like you have to find a time where everyone can meet to ask you the question. One or two, whoever is available can reach out. We can Skype, or not Skype, Zoom, or do a phone call to discuss. Okay, so don't be a stranger and get started early and watch those, the lecture videos. Most will be audio embedded into the PowerPoint slides, but there may be on occasion additional links to standalone videos, which will be structured more like screen recording. So stay on top of that. Use the resources provided, and best of luck to you. We'll be in touch soon. Have a great day.